Welcome, everybody. We are so thrilled you could be with us today. We have a few more people filtering in, so if you just joined us, feel free to open up the chat box. Let us know where you're calling in from today. We'd love to know where you are in the world. We think we have a pretty spread out group across all of our continents, so excited to see where you all are today. And we'll get started here in just a moment. All right, so we may have a few others join us, but we will go ahead and get things kicked off for today. My name is Emily White, and I'm a program manager here at Enactus for the Global Programs team. I oversee our Enactus races, including the Race to Rethink Plastic. And we're excited to welcome you all to our learning session today on all things plastic and circular economy related. We have a great presentation planned for you today with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. But before we get to that, I would like to take a minute to introduce you to a couple of our race sponsors who are very important to us. We'll first kick things off with Austin Robach from the Coca-Cola Company. Austin, go ahead.
Hi, Emily, thanks so much. And thanks to all of you for being on the line. I just really want to start by saying congratulations for having this initiative and this interest in leveraging business for an impact in the world of sustainability. Last year's Race to Rethink Plastic, the one that just concluded, was great. So many great submissions, and I know we'll see so many more this time around, and we're really excited. And the Race to Rethink Plastic really connects closely to our values at the Coca-Cola around trying to partner to drive a circular economy, right? We want to do everything we can to get a bottle or can back recollected for everyone we sell. You know, it's valuable material that's in that packaging, and we want to foster a circular economy to get that back. We want to use less virgin plastic in our packaging, and we want to use more recycled content in the packages we put out. And to do that, we need innovation, like the innovation you all are driving and working through in the Race to Rethink Plastic. And we need great partners like we have at Enactus, great partners like the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, you're heard from later today. So again, just thank you for being on this call. Really excited about this program, and we know there are exciting things in store for you as participants. And we can't wait to see what you'll be rolling out in this year's submission. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Austin. We really appreciate that. Next, I'd love to introduce Xenia Ascarcia Ortega. She is with Kaikun. And Xenia, go ahead.
Thank you, Emily. And hello, everyone, and welcome to this amazing session. My name is Xenia Garcia, and I'm the Global Marketing Communications Manager at Kaikun. The same, I would say, as Justin, congratulations to be part of these projects, and especially for your interest in developing projects that reduce plastic waste and find solutions to reduce plastic. So why do we need to rethink plastic? Plastic have made a big contribution to human life, from equipment in the medical field to packaging in the food and beverage industry. At Kaikun, we are looking for solutions, investing in creating a sustainable packaging for our customers that is 100% recyclable, biodegradable, or compostable by 2025. We are working to do our part by promoting recycling and supporting recycling programs around the world. Our products can be recycled, whatever LDPE number 4 plastics are collected. We all need to work together, changing the industry from a manufacturer point of view, working with partners across the supply chain and NGOs, allowing consumers to make truly fact-based decisions when choosing products and helping them take sustainable next steps. For example, clear guidance on recycling and the circular economy. Again, welcome, and with this, I'll turn it back to Emily.
Thank you so much, Xenia. We appreciate that as well. So without further ado, I'm pleased to turn it over to our friends at the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. Today we have Diliana, Garance, and Jennifer joining us, and they will be presenting today. So I know you will enjoy their presentation, and we will have time for questions at the end of the presentation. But if you think of anything along the way, don't hesitate to drop it in the chat box, and we will do our best to get to all the questions. So with that, Ellen MacArthur, I'll turn it over to you guys.
Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen, and Jennifer, do you want to kick us off?
Yes, I will. It's lovely to meet everybody, and thanks for joining us on the call today. So, are you sharing your screen?
Yes, can you see it?
Yeah, that's That's brilliant. Nice. So hi, everybody. Welcome to this session. This is an interactive session, so in a minute I will be kicking us off with a game. But just to introduce ourselves very briefly, so my name's Jennifer. I'm the Higher Education Network Manager at the Foundation. I've been here for a couple of years now, and I work as part of the learning team. And I'm joined by my colleagues today who will be taking us through a circular economy for plastics and exploring that a bit more. So I'd like to introduce Diliana and Garance, who are both with our New Plastics Economy team. Guys, would you like to say a brief hello before I launch into the game and further slides?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Really happy to be here. I'm with the New Plastics Economy team and the MacArthur Foundation. So super excited to hear more about the Enactus program. I was really didn't know much about it, and I'm genuinely very impressed. So really happy to share some learning that you can take forward.
Hi everyone, I'm Garance, and I also work in the New Plastics Economy team at the MacArthur Foundation, and more specifically as part of the Global Plastics Pact Network, which you will hear more about in just a moment. Again, really excited to be here and looking forward to all of your questions, conversations. Feel free to drop any thoughts that you might have on the way in the chat box, and we'll have some time at the end for a conversation. Jenny, over to you.
Wonderful, thanks so much. So if we just move on to the next slide. So thank you very much. For those of you who don't know us, so the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, we are a charity based in the UK, and our mission is to accelerate the transition to a circular economy, an economy that is restorative and regenerative by design. So that's a lot to take in. So before we dive any deeper into this world, and in particular circular economy and plastics, we just wanted to allow you to explore some of the concepts and themes we'll be encountering today and have a little bit more fun. So we're now going to take you through a game called Is It Circular? Where we're going to show you a series of images and examples, and all we ask you to do is say whether or not you think it is circular or not, by quite simply popping your yes or no into the chat box. So let's see the first one. Thanks very much. Laptops, which are modular and can be repaired and upgraded. So what do we think about these? Is this an example of circular economy? Put your thoughts, so yes or no, into the chat box. So what are we seeing? So Michelle thinks no. Just to put it out there, there may not be any right answers for some of these because it's quite a nuanced topic. So lots of you are saying no. That's interesting. Anyone thinking yes? Not yet, no. So thanks very much for using the chat function. So that's good that that's working. So we would actually be, I'll check in with my colleagues actually. Garance, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, no, it's actually quite interesting to see all these no in the chat, and I would be really curious to hear any more thoughts on this one. I would personally be inclined to say yes, because it's an example of how a circular business model can be, where the product really stays close to the user, and where exactly like you can repair it, upgrade it, so that can also have a long living life, let's say. What would you add, Jenny?
I think that's really interesting, and I think it would be great also, in addition to your no's, if you want to pop any more in the chat, you are very welcome to. But yeah, it's quite an interesting example because most of us have sort of tech and digital equipment, and laptops contain quite a lot of metal and plastic and other materials. So yeah, that's some really interesting responses there. So
maybe jump in, Jenny, real quick. Just thinking, I'm super curious about the no's, and I don't want to put people on the spot. I'm wondering whether I myself can be quite skeptical when it comes to electronics, because there's like such a popular, not popular, but it's e-waste, and all of this issue of not being able to repair electronics is really well known. So I think here it's more about like the product design is what we're calling circular, because at the stage of designing this, the idea of being able to repair it, upgrade it really easily so that you have the longest possible lifespan, and really try to focus on reusing this product rather than constantly replacing it with the next fancy new upgrade that comes in is really where the circularity is. But for sure, it really depends then on at some point there might be things that cannot be repaired, and what would happen then at the final, end of life of this product, and maybe it would still be difficult to be fully recycled in the current systems that are really limited. So I'm assuming that maybe some of the no's are coming from there, but that was just my guess.
That's really good, actually, as one of the participants has just clarified in the chat, can versus are, which is actually a really interesting point, and it I suppose it also kind of links to what you've just been saying, Diliana. However, in the interest of time as well, we will need to also move it on to the next example. So bearing what my colleagues have also said, we can, some of these, there aren't always very clear-cut answers to a lot of these. In some situations it will be, it depends, and it depends on many different factors. So with that in mind though, let's move on to the next slide. Is it circular? So mobile phone chargers, a manufacturer of chargers replaces the glossy exterior with a matte finish. I'm fairly sure I know what's going to appear in the chat, but I can be surprised. So do we think this is an example of yes or no? No's popping up. Interesting. Fabulous. Thanks very much for your thoughts, guys. So this is a little bit of an unusual one. So when me and the team were talking about this one and whether or not to include it, this is actually an example of a very simple change where the glossy exterior on these items is basically replaced with a matte finish. And this removes the need for a plastic protective film. So I found this one really interesting when we were going through it. Garance and Diliana, would you like to give any more of your comments and feedback on this example?
Yeah, I just wanted to add one point. I think again, like it's a very, very similar answer to the previous one. Like we cannot really say that it's a product per se that is circular. However, the reason why we chose to include this one is that it shows really how the design of the product, so really moving to glossy to matte, can actually have a real impact on the packaging that you need for the product. So removing altogether the need for the packaging. So that's a very good illustration of the concept of direct elimination and product design, I feel, that are really key concepts in circular economy for plastics.
Thank you, Garance. Next one, fabulous, thank you. Running shoes made from recycled ocean plastic. What are our thoughts on this one? So quite a nice looking trainer there, using up some ocean plastic. So we've had a few responses into the chat, and so this is really interesting. Most people are saying yes. Actually, everyone seems to be saying yes right now. So yeah, everyone's saying yes, 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 yes. Full of yeses, team. So what are our thoughts on this one? Because I would say, in my opinion, so we'll come on to this further along in the presentation, but a circular economy is about redesigning products and systems around those products so that nothing becomes waste in the first place. So I think we've all seen images and videos from plastic kind of in the ocean and waste plastic. So on one hand, this is a really great example, I'd say, of upcycling. But yeah, I don't know if Garance and Liana have any further comments on this one.
Yeah, I struggle with this one because there is obviously a need to do something with the big plastics problem that is already in the ocean. But when it comes to circularity, it really is thinking about prevention versus cure, and whether you're treating the symptom of the problem or trying to really prevent the linearity that is ingrained in a lot of the products that we make. So we don't really know, like, what happens to these shoes like after they're worn, and what if you keep like replacing them with other shoes that are trendy? It really is about like the material that is used. Great, it's taking away waste and upcycling it, turning it into something valuable. But in terms of the durability, the recyclability, the repairability of these shoes, that's not really speaking to that extent. So actually, it's when we didn't do this on purpose, we didn't actually expect to trick you and basically contradict the common answers that we get. But for me, this one would be a no, even though I can see that they're valuable, insights and intentions, and definitely still a useful impact there. When you think about it, if there's it may be seen as justifying having a lot of ocean waste to keep making that, where the idea is to prevent it from getting there in the first place.
Absolutely. Thank you, Diliana. And actually, yes, to all of you, it's really interesting for us when we get the opposite answer that we are expecting. And it's not a bad thing, because basically it means that the learning session after this will be hopefully really, really interesting to you all, and kind of lead to lots more questions and thoughts for everybody. I think we probably need to move on to the next. Thank you. So compostable tea bags which are made from cornstarch, enabling both the packaging and the tea leaves to be composted together. Enter your thoughts in the chat. Yes or no? Is this an example of circular economy? Michelle saying yes. Awesome. Any other thoughts from participants? Quite a few yeses coming through. That's really cool. Yeah. Vanshika saying yes. Thanks very much, everybody, for your thoughts on this one. So as you can tell from the picture, this is actually a real example. So PG Tips are switching to a plant-based compostable material derived from cornstarch for their tea bags. So this enables both the packaging and the tea leaves to be composted together. So the brand has also started the removal of the plastic overwrap from the box. So if any of you have ever, like me, gone out desperately craving more tea and caffeine, it's very difficult to find a box without a sort of plastic overwrap on it. So yes, we'd agree with you. This is an example of shifting a system and eliminating plastic as well. I think next example, unless Diliana and Garance had any other further comments on this tea bag one.
I'm going to super quickly just be that person and add
Sure.
that yes, and it depends. I think with compostability, it really depends where that product ends up, and if you put it in a recycling stream or if you put it in a composting bin in a city that doesn't have a very good composting facility, then it could be tricky. So it really depends on where you are and what you do with it. Yes, by design it's circular. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Diliana. Yes. So as I said at the beginning, that sometimes there is a big part of this story that is nuanced, and it depends on the systems at play as well. So next slide, please. Oh, sorry. Thank you very much. So the plastic bottle greenhouse. So plastic bottles are collected and used to construct a greenhouse. The greenhouse is anticipated to be used for 5 years. Let's have a look at our responses in the chat to this one. So what are people saying? There's a no from Michelle and Vanshika, a yes. Okay, so a bit of mixed responses now. Any other thoughts? Is this greenhouse, would you say this is an example of the circular economy? We've got a no. Interesting thoughts. No. So people tend to be pretty much more verging towards a no on this one. So this is a good example of repurposing a waste stream. So we've got single-use bottles there, usually used quite quickly, maybe once or twice. And some ingenious person has taken these discarded bottles and upcycled them. So whilst I'd say that this is a really commendable project, especially as it's a greenhouse and sort of used for growing food, it's not necessarily an example of a circular economy for plastics. It's a clever reutilization of waste. So it's basically, I'd say, I don't know about Garance and Diliana, but I'd say it's treating the symptoms of a waste problem and not so much the cause of it. Would you both agree?
Completely agree. I think it's actually very similar to the trainers that we showed before. So now we have a lot of no, which is really interesting.
Fantastic. And I think I'm pushing us on time as well. Sorry. So on to the last slide before we kick off the presentation. So durable cups consumers take from participating coffee shops and cafes. They use them, then deposit at drop-off points for cleaning and distribution back to retailers. Everybody, participants, what are our thoughts on this? Is this an example of circular economy for plastics? So we've got, I think, a yes coming through, a no. Further up, that might have been to the previous one. Some yeses, some more yeses. Yeah, you've all got it. Awesome. everyone's saying yes. So this one's actually a company. It's featured in the Upstream Innovation Guide, which we'll come on to a bit later on in our session. And it's a company called Cup Club. So it's an example of a reuse system for drinks on the go. So it provides, Cup Club provides these universal durable cups to cafes and participating coffee shops. Users don't need to carry and wash their own reusable cup. And the integrated app helps the users locate drop-off points. So that then once the cups have been dropped off after you've had your coffee or cup of tea or drink, Cup Club uses a digital ID to track each cup and takes care of cleaning and then the distribution back to the retailers. So it's a really, really good example, I think, of sort of circular economy for plastics, especially when I'm so dependent on my morning cup of coffee, especially if I'm traveling somewhere. So Diliana and Garance, did you have any final comments about this one?
Love it.
Maybe just a comment from my side. I think this one is really interesting, and coming back to, I think it was Michelle's comment earlier around when we talked about laptops and like modular laptops. He added the comment around they can be repaired, and they are repaired. The difference, and I feel like the difference between these two examples is that in the Cup Club example, the system for reusable exists, so they can be reused. Whereas actually for the laptops, we didn't have like at least the proof that a system existed. So that's a bit the difference. And that also shows the importance of a system for reuse, or a system for recycling, a system for composting, etc.
Thank you, Garance. That's fantastic, guys. That's the end of the game. But it was just to get everybody thinking and exploring your kind of current understanding of the circular economy. And now, without further ado, I'm going to pass back to my colleagues to kick us off to explore a little bit more about what we're talking about with circular economy. Thanks so much for participating in the game.
Thanks so much, Jenny. So I would like to quickly start with another very, very mini quick game. And I'd like to start by asking you to close your eyes and imagine. It's January 1925. It's New Year in the lakeside city of Geneva, and there are Christmas lights all over the city. And meanwhile, representatives from the world's leading light bulb manufacturers are gathered in a very small room, and they're all together coming to a collective decision. And this decision is that in order to save their industry, their light bulb industry, they agree to limit the lifespan of their light bulbs to only 1,000 hours, which is significantly below what they were capable of producing at that time. So you can now all come back and open your eyes again. And when we look at it today, many consider this particular moment that happened really in Geneva in January 1925 as the moment that have been the first case of planned obsolescence. And planned obsolescence is the intentional reduction of the lifespan of a product in order to increase sales. So that decision was made based on an economic system that is built on the idea of repetitive consumption. So buying light bulbs again and again, which is really the foundation of our modern economy. And in order to sell more stuff and keep the economy growing, we have to take more resources from the ground, make all of that into the many different products that people want. And then when those products are no longer needed or wanted, they're disposed of. So it's really a take, make, waste, linear economy. Resources are going in at the beginning, and waste is coming out at the end.
Thank you, Garance. What a powerful example. I feel like the first time I heard this story, I just literally could not believe it. That we made such a conscious decision to really go into this like fast pace, let's use things not for as long as we can. And to be really fair, to give it the benefit of the doubt, this linear system has really brought so much prosperity. We have really enjoyed like amazing technological innovations as a result of it. And we have access to nearly anything we can imagine at a quick time scale, low costs around the world. The quality of life that we have has massively improved. So it's not necessarily inherently bad. There were a lot of social aspects, and improving quality of life has been a big part of it. But this is really where the things start to go wrong with the linear economy. And first off, it doesn't really make very effective use of resources, which we know are really limited. So if we look at a product such as a car, the average European car spends 92% of its life parked. It's incredibly ineffective use of materials that are available to us. And not only that it's incredibly wasteful, but also our environment is suffering as a result. And I know you're probably familiar with lots of images of that. But another thing to think about maybe is the recycling symbol that we see on products all around us. It's been out there for 40 years. But at the end of the day, we only collect around 14% of plastic packaging around the world, and then only 2% gets recycled in a closed loop system, which is quite shocking. That means that what we're left with is a staggering stat where a third of the plastic we put out there is ending up in the environment. So from an economic perspective, every product and all of the material that ends up in landfill, gets incinerated, ends up in the ocean, is purely wasted money. All of the labor, the energy, the time that went into making that is really thrown away with it. And again, thinking back about plastics, as an example, after a very short use, think about the fork that you might grab with your on-the-go lunch. It's literally a matter of seconds, you throw it away, then 90%, over 90% of that and the material value is lost, which is costing us about 80 to 120 billion US dollars to the economy every single year. So with all of this ineffectiveness, the wasteful use of resources, the linear economy is clearly not working for our planet and for the growing population. And so far, most of the focus has been on doing less bad. When we often think about how do we solve things, we try to reduce, and we end up with basically going from a thicker, heavy, resource-heavy economy to slightly less resource-heavy economy, and we try to make this arrow of linear economy much smaller. So this might be a place to start, but we do know that it's not going to work in the long term because we're still using up a lot of these resources just at a slower pace. So we're buying ourselves some time, but it's not enough. It's still a linear system. It's still wasteful. So then the second thought is typically, okay, well, can we improve waste management and maybe make the arrow shorter? Can we clean up our oceans? Can we recycle more? While these actions might address some of the pollution issues by themselves, really none of these approaches would still solve the problem in the long term, because as we said with some of the examples in the game we just played, they're treating the symptoms rather than getting into the root cause of the issue. So one thing that that's an example that we use quite a lot, maybe you've heard about it already, but it really helps me to think about it like this. If you come home, your kitchen sink is overflowing with water, do you run and take a bucket and start mopping and trying to clean up the water that is already on the floor? Or do you first go and stop and try to turn the tap off before you do anything else? So that's prevention over cure approach. So then with all of its inefficiency, waste and pollution, again, this linear take, make, waste way of doing things can no longer support the growing population. The system needs to change. There's clear arguments for that. And really the alternative idea, and that's our entire Ellen MacArthur Foundation's focus is around creating a circular place.
Yes, creating a circular economy. And so an alternative system by fundamentally rethinking the way we design, use, and reuse products and materials. So not only thinking about how do we manage the system a little bit better, how do we do more efficient ways of managing things, but really rethinking how we design and use the products. And that means doing things completely differently. So for example, coming back to the light bulb example, instead of selling as many light bulbs as possible, like these companies back in 1925 in Geneva, you could sell light itself. So light itself would become the product instead of the light bulb. And that's exactly what Philips Lighting, which is now called Signify, are doing exactly in places like Schiphol Airport in the Netherlands, where basically the light required to illuminate the airport is provided not as a product anymore, but as a service where the customer pays for the lights and Signify has ownership of all the light fittings, which has been designed to be long-lasting and durable, and that ultimately they will be returned, reused, refurbished, recycled by Signify. So really, Signify is providing the light as a service rather than a product, which is a completely different way of thinking about lights and how you get light in spaces. And this is just one example of a circular model that works and that is entirely different to today's system. And when we zoom out, and if you can go to the next slide, Dee, the three principles that we think about when we think of a circular economy is, first of all, designing out waste and pollution. So rather than treating the symptoms and deal with the waste once it has been created. Then the second one is around keeping products and materials in use at their highest possible value for as long as possible. So that's again like the modular laptop, for example, by providing repair options, refurbishing options. And then the third principle is around regenerating natural systems. So rather than extracting value out of our natural environments to make as many products as possible, we rethink the way of operating to really increase the health of natural system from the beginning. And these three principles are really the foundation for a system that can work in the long term for a circular economy. And the last point, that if you just go back to the last slide 1 second, there's a last point I wanted to emphasize, which is that circular economy is not just about material, it's not just about material management, but it's really about designing systems that are fit for the context and then designing products that are fit for these systems. So it's a vision that really contributes not only to tackling plastic waste and pollution, but also some today's key global challenges such as climate change, biodiversity loss. It really goes beyond just managing better waste systems. Do you want to talk a little bit about who we work with? Did I lose the? Okay, I can keep on going. So, Dee, are you back?
Yes, sorry, go ahead. I lost my buttons for a second. Go ahead.
Okay, no worries. So this vision that we were talking about with the three big principles is not just about the MacArthur Foundation, but there are really, and we're seeing an increasing numbers of stakeholders sharing this vision and working with us on circular economy. So the European Commission, who in 2015 adopted an ambitious circular economy action plan, businesses from across the industries that are exploring the circular economy as a source of value creation. So Google, Renault, Philips, H&M, many different stakeholders, and also BlackRock, who is the largest asset manager in the world, who launched the first circular economy investment fund, I think in 2019.
Thank you, Garance. Apologies, the joys of remote working. So yeah, thank you for introducing the huge idea of circular economy. I know it can be quite overwhelming and a bit abstract. So at the MacArthur Foundation, we really took one part and sector of the economy to really demonstrate and use it as a flagship project that demonstrates how the circular economy idea can work in practice. And we've started with plastic. And when you think about plastic packaging for a moment, like today, nearly everyone everywhere comes into contact with plastic packaging every single day. It's great, has many benefits, protective, lightweight, economical, again, has transformed our lives from medicine to transport. But at the same time, the plastic packaging economy has become this most iconic example of what a linear economy, the shortcomings of a linear economy, this take, make, waste system is so obvious. You cannot miss it with plastics. The drawbacks are all around us and increasingly visible. So probably one of the biggest highlights of the research that we've done in that space is this highlight stat from our 2016 report, which basically shows that if we continue on the current trajectory in the way we are producing and using plastics by 2050, that's in less than 30 years' time now, there will be more plastics than fish in the ocean. That is really, really mind-blowing. So we're really talking from this a bit more theoretical concept that Garance was explaining, that we're talking about some massive global issues that are really complex, but also extremely urgent. So it's really clear the system needs to change. And that is going to be a really major shift. That's probably the two big things that we're learning, combining the really theoretical part with this really iconic sector of the economy that is plastics. Garance, back to you.
Nice. So to do something about it and to prove that a circular economy for plastics is possible, or at least that's what we believe in, we started the New Plastics Economy initiative back in 2016. And so we're focusing on this one specific material flow, plastics, and our very modest ambition is to set the global economy on an irreversible path towards a future where plastics never become waste. Quite ambitious. And what we learned on the way is that changing this global system requires a completely new approach, and an approach where the entire value chain, so all actors in the system, so in the plastic systems, that mean plastic producers, companies who produce the packaging, companies who sell the products, and retailers, etc. All the plastic value chain are coming together and collaborating with the perspective of the entire system in mind. And so over the last 4 years, we have really started to build momentum behind the circular economy for plastics across the world and with all actors. And today we now have over 1,000 organizations that are united behind our vision for circular economy for plastics, which is massive. And so if you go to next slide, D, where that is our vision. So I will leave you after the presentation to go into more detail if you want to, but just to say a few elements around it is that, so these 1,000 stakeholders explicitly recognize that today's plastic waste crisis is not just a waste management issue, which is huge. And they recognize that while recycling will be part of the solution, we won't only recycle our way out of this issue, and we need to rethink together how we produce plastics, how we use plastics, and how we reuse plastics. And so they have committed to fundamentally rethink the way that we design our products by eliminating all the problematic and unnecessary plastic items that we don't need, by innovating to ensure that the plastics that we do need are safely reused, recycled, or composted, and by circulating all the plastic items effectively so that they stay out of the environment and kept in the economy.
Brilliant. So this huge global vision, as Garan said, we are big fans of massive ambition, but we are also trying to figure out how do we deliver this in practice. And we have launched 2 main projects, really 2 big initiatives to get this really launched and delivered in practice in the real world. So the first one is our Global Commitment Initiative. And that's a collaboration with the United Nations Environment Programme that we launched in October 2018. So it's only been 3 years, but it has been a massive moment because this really draws a line in the sand in the fight against plastic waste and pollution. We now have over 500 organizations around the world that collectively represent over 20% of the global plastics packaging value chain. And that includes CocaCola, who you heard from earlier in the session, to Unilever, Apple, to ASOS, so some of the biggest multinational companies in the world, all united behind this common vision that Garan's just presented around how to address the biggest plastics issues with really transparent and public progress reporting towards their targets every year. And given that we need to change the global systems, we do need to have really diverse stakeholders involved and really aligned on that. So in addition to businesses, we also have governments that have signed up to the global commitment that have also aligned with the same concrete 2025 targets that are taking now real action to achieve them. And progress is reported every year, and actually just yesterday we launched our latest progress report that we can share a link after the presentation if you want to dive into that a bit more. And I think Garan is actually going to share a bit more later in the session. But I want to quickly tell you a bit more of the other big initiative that we have launched to really concretely deliver the vision of a new plastics economy. And that's probably a bit closer to my and Garan's day-to-day work. And that's our Global Plastics Pact Network, where in addition to the global alignment with multinational companies, we are also looking at the local level and how on the ground we can translate this vision. And that can look very different from contexts like Chile to the US, South Africa to Portugal. So in Chile, for instance, recycling infrastructure is not developed as much as it is in Europe. There's an important informal waste sector, meaning there's more waste pickers that collect waste and bring it to recycling plants. And because Chile doesn't have so much existing recycling infrastructure, they have a big opportunity to innovate, look upstream, go towards reuse, for instance, maybe even faster than places that are maybe locked into slightly more outdated recycling infrastructure. So we do see the need for on-the-ground solutions that are really tailored to the local context, and that are really complementing this global level action that is driven through the global commitment. So what are plastics pacts really? They are country or multi-country level implementation initiatives. They are led by an independent local organization that we partner with. So organizations that are on the ground, they bring together all of the key stakeholders across the supply chain at national level. So businesses, governments, NGOs, and all of the pacts in the network share the common principles of circular economy for plastics that is at the basis of all of their activities. Today, we have 12 plastics pacts that have been launched across North America, Latin America, Europe, and Africa. They together cover over 20 countries that represent over 30% of GDP. And at the moment, we're focusing on the delivery of this plastics pact network. But you might be wondering again, like, this is still really big. What is happening in practice? So let's talk about some actual products and examples. Garance.
Yes, thanks, Dee. Yes, so just to finish the presentation, we really wanted to share a few examples of like concrete innovations that we observed and partners that we work with, but also some overall trends of what we see happening in the plastics packaging space, what our latest progress reports are telling us about the data, etc. So the first thing I will start with is in the space of elimination. And so in the space of elimination, we see that businesses are working to eliminate and making some progress on eliminating the most commonly identified problematic packaging categories in their portfolio. So that's polymers such as PS, PVC, undetectable carbon black, and some others. And the way companies are eliminating these items are either very straightforward, so like removing wraps from multi-buy cans, or even the charger example that we had at the beginning, that's what we call direct elimination. But another way to eliminate packaging is what we call innovative elimination, and that's the Apple example that we have here on the slides. Apple is a company that produces an edible plant-based coating that keep products fresh for 2 or 3 times longer compared to non-coated produce, and therefore can reduce food wastage. So without the need for any packaging, which is a very exciting example. And talking about elimination, one of the key findings of this year's progress reports, and I think you can move to the next slide. Yes, perfect. Is that the use of virgin plastics in packaging seems to have peaked for brands and retailers that are signed up to the global commitments. So what does that mean? That means that after decades of growing use of virgin plastics, now we might actually be on the path to decrease the use of virgin plastics. We saw an initial 0.6 decrease in 2019, and the 2020 data shows a 1.2% decrease. And the other thing is that from this year, we made it mandatory for all brands and retail signatories to set a reduction target. And so these targets together would result in an almost 20% decrease in virgin plastics use between 2018 and 2020. That's a very important milestone for us and for the whole plastic packaging space. That's very, very positive. And that's also a strong signal to the rest of the industry to follow the lead of these signatories and set similar reduction targets. Because for now, the industry at large, we are not yet seeing virgin plastics peak, but it's specifically for the group of signatories that we work with. So that's for elimination. If we move to packaging design, we see also changes happening. So yeah, if you can move to next slide, that would be perfect, nice. So we see changes happening through color, format, material choices that increase recyclability. So that's a very concrete example of Sprite bottles that were turned from green to clear. And these were rolled out by Coke in Europe, in Southeast Asia. And that really highly improves the value of recycling. And another area of progress that we see is the increase in the incorporation of recycled content. So plastic that is recycled and incorporated in new plastic packaging. we saw that the companies that we work with are using 29% more recycled content in 2020 versus 2019. So again, that's a very strong increase, and that's great. If you can move to next slide. Perfect. Most excitingly, we also see that within the signatories group, we see the emergence of models which rethink the delivery of products that are more and more emerging and that are allowing to move from single use to reuse. And so these are just a few examples of some really interesting innovators that we see in that space. One is Loop that you may be familiar with. So it's a platform where you can buy everyday products such as ice cream, shampoo, but in redesigned superior packaging that you then return to the businesses for them to clean, refill, and reuse. And the other one here is Algramo. It's in a completely different context. It's a startup from Chile that is piloting a dispensing system on wheels and partnering with Nestle and Unilever. And basically that's a tricycle that is solar powered and will turn up in front of your door, and people can then just go out and refill detergent, pet food in the quantities that they desire. Those are just a few examples. Dee, do you want to share a bit the trends and the call to actions that we're seeing recently?
Absolutely. Thank you, Garance. I think while these are some really brilliant examples and we see a growing number of these examples, we fully recognize that we are on a journey and there really won't be one simple solution or a quick fix. We see players taking significant action. We see there's a huge momentum across government, business, and citizens to really mobilize towards a world where plastic never becomes waste. But really, I think the key thing to keep in mind is that we won't recycle our way out of this. And one concerning thing that we are observing is that recycling has been the dominating progress area across all of these initiatives so far. So we need a further increase in the ambition to go beyond recycling, go further upstream. We have a nice illustration here of what we mean by upstream and downstream. How close are we to the source, and how the decisions we make early in the design stage are really, really massively influential, and we have a lot more scope to change the system if we go further upstream. So just to give you a quick example, less than 2% of the signatories plastic packaging, this is the global commitment, while we're seeing a lot of reduction, as Garance said, it's driven by recycling. So less than 2% of all of the plastic packaging these companies are using is reusable at the moment. So the majority is still single use. And then more than half of the signatories have even 0% reusability, so fully single use. Again, we're looking at this linear way of using plastic. Here's a fork, 2 seconds in the bin. So there's emerging pilots. For example, 11% of the global commitment signatories have launched more than 3 pilots in 2020. So there is something, but again, we're not seeing these pilots going into scale. So what we're really calling for at this stage is more urgent focus on these upstream solution, reusability, durability. And we keep working really closely with all of these companies to provide the tools, the facilitation, all of the enabling factors to make that as easy and as fast as possible. So a lot of the examples that Garance actually shared are coming from our upstream innovation guide that is available online. It's a really cool piece of research. I highly recommend it. And we are receiving really useful feedback from companies that it can be used in practice to try to shift the focus from recycling more upstream towards reuse. And finally, just zooming out of the global commitment itself, that it is still a voluntary initiative. So we fully recognize that that alone will not be enough. We still need to, first of all, it's a voluntary initiative, but it also only covers 20% of the plastic packaging sector. So there's still 80% out there that hasn't even committed voluntarily to drive this change. So that's where policy and policymaking and government leaders will play a crucial role. And actually, we are seeing growing momentum there. We're supporting and disseminating a call for a global treaty on plastics. So that's really the equivalent of a Paris climate agreement, the Paris agreement that we have for climate change, developing that for plastics. And that can set a clear direction with a high common standard of action for all countries and stakeholders to drive a really consistent and urgent transition to a circular economy for plastics that is truly global and mandatory. So I know we've thrown so much information during a really short period of time. So all of these links will be available to you. I basically wanted to highlight there's a lot of assets and opportunities to learn more on our website, some really interactive videos that you can check out. I love the one with Sir David Attenborough, some cool animations. So I'll let you explore these in your own time. And maybe Garan, so I'll let you maybe do some final concluding remarks before we open up for questions.
Thanks, T. Yeah, no, I just wanted to share some final words from my side, and also to finish just on a positive note, because we like finishing on a positive note. And I really hope that this presentation has inspired you for your future projects. And we would really encourage you to really think beyond of where we are today. Think beyond just making small tweaks and making our system a bit more efficient. But really think outside of what's the best solution in our current system, but instead ask yourself, can your product be delivered in a completely new way? Does it need packaging at all? Is the current packaging the best for this product? And I think one thing that we've really learned in our journey is that all these questions are definitely not easy, and finding answers to this question will be the hardest part, and it will need collaboration and it will need a lot of time. But we just need to be bold. If we want to solve the problem, we need to be bold in questioning, in rethinking, and in proposing solutions to change the linear system that we live in. And we need to look for circular economy solutions. I will stop here. I don't see any questions at the moment in the chat, but feel free to unmute and also jump in case you have any thoughts or questions on the presentation.
Yes, thank you so much to the team from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. That was great. As they mentioned, we would love for you all to ask questions. If you have any, you're welcome to raise your hand, drop them in the chat box. These can be questions about the presentation, about the Race to Rethink Plastic in general, anything that you might want to ask, feel free. And it looks like we have a bit of a quiet group. Definitely feel free to ask those questions, as hopefully those are coming in. I have just a little bit of information that I can share from my side as far as the next steps in the race. So if you've enjoyed today's presentation, if you already have a project that's looking at rethinking plastic, or you have a great idea of when to start, we would love for you to enter the Race to Rethink Plastic. The deadline to enter is December 7th, so still time to put that together, submit your action entry on Enactus Plus and get that in. And it looks like we have a question. So we have a question about, what are your views on using plastics in the manufacture of fabrics? Can we execute this idea with keeping low budgets in mind?
Garan, shall I start? I'll make a start. I think, yeah, actually one of the most common uses of plastic beyond packaging is in fabrics and in fashion. And we have, because of that, launched a fashion program, and we have a fashion team. What I want to say in terms of budgets, it's really thinking about the cost in addition to the circularity. So we know that there is the problem of fast fashion and the ability to buy cheap fabrics and cheap clothes that are usually made from cheap plastic, that are often then you buy more and more of those rather than trying to use them for a really long time. So I think there is a lot of schemes where you can be renting fabrics and you can be using secondhand fabrics. So that can be a way to keep budgets in mind, and that doesn't have to be really affected by the material that goes into the fabrics. I think these two things can be quite separate. So one way to, I actually think that having fabrics made from plastics does make them cheaper. It's more making sure that you can use the cheaper fabrics in a more long-term, durable, reusable, and re-rentable way, if that makes sense. The only other thing I want to mention with plastic and fabrics is there is the huge problem of microplastics and microfibers, which does affect circularity in general, and it's the idea of material escaping the system, not just at the end of life. So not just about if these clothes are no longer used and the fabrics have to be recycled, is that a closed loop system? But actually, as we use these clothes and as we wash them in our washing machines, there is plastic escaping the system. So these are tiny little fibers that are passing through the filters of our washing machines and escaping into waterways and rivers and the ocean. So I would say the cost is probably not the biggest idea. And I'm sure we can actually find examples, Garance, from our fashion team where fabrics maintain the budgets down and they're still circular products, but it's also keeping in mind how difficult it might be to maintain the circularity regardless of the budget when it comes to plastics and fabrics. That was a very rounded way of answering this question. So happy to have follow up. And Garance, do you have anything else to add to this one?
Yeah, I just wanted to share. So you mentioned the MacArthur Foundation Fashion Initiative, and I'm just going to share the link to that in the chat. And I just wanted to add that this fashion initiative has also defined the whole vision on how to approach designing circular clothes. And they have also defined a few principles. So the first one is that the products should be designed to be used more, to be made again, and to be made from safe and recycled or renewable input. So I think maybe keeping these 3 principles in mind as you work on your circular clothes project can also be very helpful.
So much more applied and simple, Garance. Should have gone first. Really.
No, that's great. Are there any other questions? Yes, so we will definitely reshare this presentation. So we will definitely be posting that up on our Enactus YouTube channel, and we will email all the participants as soon as that is ready to view. So keep an eye on your email, and we will also share it on the Race to Rethink Plastic Enactus Plus page. All right. Oh, it looks like we have another question from India. This is from Enactus Hansraj. Excuse me. So in our country, a lot of plastic ends up in landfills and therefore needs to be segregated thoroughly. It consists mainly of plastic bags, which are made of very low grade plastic. Can this be recycled, or does the plastic quality become a hindrance?
Yeah, I have to say from my experience, that's such a common issue, especially in countries where the infrastructure simply doesn't allow, even if these bags are designed to be recyclable, they may be designed to be recycled in places where the infrastructure is really, really advanced. So I would say that's a really good case of where thinking about elimination and reuse to really make the system, make it easier for what has to be recycled, make the downstream system recyclability easier by affecting what goes into it in the first place. I think in that case, these bags would simply not be recyclable in the infrastructure that is there. So you either have to find a way to deal with them that is not going to be very resource smart until the infrastructure is there, or you have to take them out of the system. And I think that's a really strong case for the elimination and smarter design. Garance.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to add to build on this, and just saying that when we think about our circular economy for vision, we think, as Dee said, first about eliminating, then innovating so that all the packaging can be reused. And then when we think about circulating, where we see that circulating can actually be very efficient and be and really works in practice and at scale, is where the plastic packaging has high value and high quality, and very often it's what we see also with we've been doing some work on what we call the flexible, so that can be like the sachet crisps, the crisp sachet, sorry, all the sachet that you use for small portions, etc. These kind of, and that's also carrier bags. This kind of packaging sometimes have, or very often have, very low value, and so that's where actually, even if there were to be recycled, actually they would not even be recycled into plastic packaging that would have value. So what we are aiming for is that the circulating part would basically be circulating, for example, PET bottles that have high quality, high value, and that can be kept in the loop basically, rather than plastic packaging that has a lower value and lower quality, if that makes any sense.
And it is something, actually, this flexibles work that Garance mentioned, recognizing how difficult these bags, flexible plastics are for everyone, really. We are publishing a paper specifically on them that identifies solution pathways that are clearly prioritized. And I think the only thing we can probably share at this moment is that, again, it kind of reinforces the message that elimination can really go a long way, because we know that the systems are not there, the quality is really low. So that paper is coming up start of next year, and we can share it as well.
Awesome, thank you. So unfortunately, we are at time for today, so we are going to wrap things up, but I'd like to extend a huge thank you to the Ellen MacArthur Foundation for presenting for us today, to Austin at Coke and Xenia at Haikon. We just really appreciate you being with us today. And thank you to all of our attendees as well. We hope you enjoyed today. We do have another student learning session for our race, or excuse me, our One Race for Oceans coming up tomorrow. So if you're interested in that, we've got some links on Enactus Plus and on our Enactus social media. So hope to see you there as well. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And please don't hesitate to reach out to us with any questions. Our email address for the Enactus races is races@enactus.org, and you can find more information at plus.enactus.org. So thank you so very much. We hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Have
you.
a nice day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.